Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Glow The Firefly, released in 1941. It's the 319th in the series and it's directed by Chuck Jones. This short has been restored. However, at the time of this recording, it's not on physical media. Hopefully it will one day, and if it does come on physical media, I'll update the description below. But lucky for you guys, this one's in the public domain. Or maybe after you watch it, you might think I should have said unlucky, but anyway, we'll definitely go through it. But for consistency's sake, I'll just let you know what happens, because there's really not much. You just have a camping site, a man is sleeping in his tent, and the Firefly, whom I'm assuming they've named Joe Glow, there's no other reference to the name in this short. He just interacts with this person and interacts with other stuff, and that's pretty much it. So there's really not much to it per way of story. Trivia-wise, there's actually a few here. Later on, when you watch the short, you'll notice that Looney Tunes theme song, The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down, is different in this one. And there's been a few shorts of late where they'll try different variations. Maybe they're just trying a few different things before they're settled on the rendition that they would end up using over and over. So I don't know why there was an alternate take in this one. Again, it was probably just them trying new things, nothing more. I haven't found any information to suggest why they actually did this. Now, this is actually Chuck Jones's first solo-directed black and white short. He did co-direct a few with Bob Clampett, although he went uncredited. He then took over Frank Tashlin's unit, where he ended up directing the Color Merry Melody shorts. But there was a bit of a shake-up just before this, so Chuck Jones and Tex Avery would do the Color Merry Melodies. You had Frisch Freleng, who had just come back, but he did a mix of color and black and white, and Bob Clampett would only be allowed to do the Porky Pigs, so the cheap black and white shorts. But then there was that change where every director had to direct both color and black and white shorts. Hence why now Chuck Jones will direct a few black and white shorts before going back to doing only color. And this is the only black and white short he did that does not feature Porky. So maybe he did this thinking he could create a character that would take off. Who knows? He does try a few times over the years to create characters that will hopefully take off. And he does succeed, of course, later on with Pepe Le Pew and the Cody and Roadrunner. But when you watch this short, you can definitely see why Joe Glow didn't exactly take off. So if you've seen the short Goodnight Elmer, you pretty much know what to expect here. This is, again, Chuck trying to more or less experiment when it comes to characters doing pantomime. Maybe he was influenced by the Pluto shorts from Disney, because that's pretty much what they are. It's just pantomime. It's just Pluto interacting with the world. And he does the same here. But it also combines that with what he seemingly always loved to do, and that's have small characters in a big world. So, of course, one of his main characters at this point is Sniffles, which is a mouse interacting with all these large items around him, and Tom Thumb in Trouble. Again, that stars a very small character in one of the most serious Looney Tunes shorts ever made. But even later on, he would make shorts involving mice and how they would interact with the larger world. So this is definitely in his wheelhouse. He definitely loved to explore that. The problem is this isn't particularly funny. This is probably more worth watching to see how he approached directing a black and white short, because again, he didn't do one before, at least solo. So by watching this, it's interesting to see how he added his more artistic sensibilities in a black and white world. Now, for those of you who have been following this channel for a while, yes, I did an audio commentary on this with some of my colleagues who still recorded with me today. That's still up on the channel, but that also came out at a time where I felt the commentaries were going a little bit astray, where it felt more like just a bunch of people talking about random things and not focusing on discussing the history of the short itself. So doing these reviews allows me to make that right. But hey, if you guys want to still see the older commentary, it's still on the channel. So we're going to go through this short from start to finish and just see what the positives are, because we already know it's slower paced, it's not haha funny, we know this. But let's have a look and see what else is of merit in this short. So I already mentioned the fact that, yes, we have a different rendition of Merry-Go-Round Broke Down, and yes, there was more than one animator, so you got Phil Moreau, he's credited, but you've definitely got the other mainstays of Chuck Jones at the time, so Ken Harris, Ben Washam, Bob Cannon, and Rudy LaRiva. You've also got Carl Stalling doing the score, and what's interesting is that Carl Stalling got his start in silent films. So given that Chuck Jones is doing a pantomime film here, honestly, one of the best parts of this short is the actual score and how it accentuates what's going on the screen and just shows how brilliant Carl Starling actually was when in that element. And we don't hear too much by way of musical cues. You do hear Dance the Clowns in the opening, which is something that Starling liked to use a lot, and you hear actually quite a bit in a few Chuck Jones shorts. You've got March of the Fairies, and you've also got On Wings of Song. What's interesting is that all three of those cues were by Felix Mendelssohn. So I don't know if Jones specifically wanted that music, because he did definitely have his taste in music. Later on, he would, of course, do things based on the opera and all that, shorts that are way more well-known than this one. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that you have three musical cues and all of them were done by the same person, Felix Mendelssohn. So there you are. So that's interesting at least, right? So we open up at this campsite, we see the tent here, and one of the things to pay attention to with this one, and it really pops in this restoration by the way, is the light. And I'm, again, assuming here that Jones not only wanted to practice the pantomime element of this, but he also wanted to work on the whole light element and just play up on the fact that this is indeed a black and white short. So we enter the tent, and some have said that this camper seems to be a caricature of Chuck Jones himself. He was bigger at the time. I can kind of see it. Whether that's actually true or not, or just coincidence or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, I could see it. Actually, funnily enough, he almost looks like me without the glasses. Well, when I was actually a lot more fatter, but anyway, still, the nose is similar. I got a round nose, and this character's got a round nose, so there's that. But again, despite being a lower budgeted black and white shorts, Jones still adds his creative flourishes. So if you look at a lot of the shots with this man, that's not part of the background. You can see the duotone that he had been doing in a lot of the Sniffle shorts and other shorts at the time. So the fly just explores this person's head, and I love the detail of the background. And again, when I last looked at this short for that commentary, which again is up on the channel, that's with the older print that I was able to find at the time. But since then, this got restored, and this looks amazing. In fact, even if you look at the nose itself, it's even got those little blackhead pimples on there. So it's interesting how far they went with the detail on this one, but it looks really good. Well, not the pimples, but I'm sure you get what I mean. So again, we've got wonderful character animation of this firefly, which, of course, it's a firefly, so it has to have a fireman's helmet, because why not? Even though it doesn't do anything about putting out fires or anything. In fact, this short doesn't even establish why he's even here in the first place. Now, you might say, oh, it's just a bug that's just entered in, and that's that. Sure, but then it doesn't really play up much with what happens at the very end. Later on, Chuck would, if he was directing this, he might have added a thing in the beginning saying, well, I'm just doing my nightly duties. I've got to make sure that there's not going to be a fire that starts in this tent or something, and that would have made it at least kind of more interesting. But anyway, so the firefly interacts with the eye, has a look inside, sees himself in the reflection. So again, it's just him interacting with the world. And you're going to hear me say a lot of that, unfortunately, because really there isn't that much to say otherwise. But he's exploring around, and I love the background of this camper smiling as well, and how it just changes from a painted background to an actual animated bit. So I wonder who had the thankless task of animating the actual lips all smiling and trapping the firefly into one of his wrinkles there. So these are the mysteries that must be solved. We have to find out. Because when it comes to IDing animators, by the way, it's much easier to do so when actually watching the animation itself on a full figure versus just a tiny little bit like that. So he's continuing to interact with this body, which, again, it's very slow going. Nothing really much happens. It's just being curious about this camper until he ends up going on top of a watch. And I do like that shot, though, of underneath where we see the perspective from inside the watch. So at least that's a really nice detail. And again, it does pop in this restoration. So he continues on, goes past the fingernail, which acts like it's ice. It's an interesting idea, I guess. And I never thought I'd say this, but the detail on that nail is really nice. And after 3 minutes and 45 seconds of him interacting with everything, finally something happens. We get a little bit of drama, which doesn't really amount to much, and that's him landing on the torch, which briefly switches on, causes the camper to look like he's going to wake up, but then the torch is switched off and he goes back to sleep. Story-wise, it would have been more interesting maybe if the camper actually got up or something. I'm sure at this point, if someone like Tex Avery was directing this, it would have made the situation a lot more funnier, but Again, I don't think that's what Jones was going for here. It's just him with pantomime and him playing with the light and all of that in a black and white setting and nothing more. So the Firefly realizes, okay, I better not really interact with him anymore, and now he just interacts with the food. So he interacts with the crackers, which makes a noise, and that ends up freaking him out. I do like the animation here and all the smears involved of him trying to escape this cracker, because again, he doesn't realize that the noise being made is him actually stomping on it. That's a really nice one to freeze frame, especially with all those brush strokes. He ends up in the cheese. We've got a gag of sorts involving the light going out through the holes, and he interacts with the salt that pours out. Now, after this, Jones would slowly go away from having literal backgrounds in his shorts to stylized backgrounds. And I think this salt bit here, where you can see the salt looking all stylized the way it is now, and plus there's another shot later on, you can see that he's going to slowly start adding more artistic elements. And I think that's when Jones truly starts to shine, once he isn't so literal in his backgrounds. So he enters the pepper. We hear the first of only 2 times you're going to hear Mel Blanc here, and him actually sneezing. And we get a bit of drama where he sneezes onto the catsup. Not ketchup, catsup. There's my Simpsons reference. And for those who know, they know. Okay. So the bottle's about to fall off, but then he ends up going on a ball of yarn. And here's another stylistic element. Look at that ball of yarn. Everything else looks more literal, but this looks a lot more stylized. I don't think this short was Jones's aha moment or anything to become more stylized when it comes to making his shorts. I don't think it all happened under a vacuum. I think it was just a gradual thing, and little things like this might have led him to do more and more and more with each passing short. So the Firefly manages to catch the bottle, literally hanging on by a thread, right next to a knife, which honestly any other director might have followed through and maybe had the knife cut through the thread or whatever. Anyway, again, I don't think it's that kind of short, regardless. And that's pretty much it for the table. So not really much of consequence actually happens. You just get a couple of near misses and that's it. So he's about to leave. And then we get that close-up of him thinking, I forgot to do something. Again, I like the fact that you got the duotone in that close-up there of all the different grayscale, plus the brushstroke animation of his wings. So again, it's the details that are really nice here. But he goes back, flies up to the camper's ear. Mel Blanc says his only other part in this short, which is yelling out good night, which is supposed to be a punchline, but it doesn't work. And he ends up leaving and we end right there. But I guess the punchline just doesn't work because we just don't care about what had happened up until that point. I get the idea here. The whole short is, he's trying to keep absolutely quiet. And then the punchline is, okay, I'm just going to say good night and leave. And that's that. But there's no build up to it. Say what you want about Goodnight Elmer. I'm not saying that's a masterpiece by any means, but at least with that one, there was the build up where all those things happen. He finally gets to sleep and then the sun rises and he does his little cry at the end. It's a similar idea here, except there's nothing that justifies that ending and it makes you laugh and go, oh, haha, yes, he was quiet all this time. What an idiot. No, sorry, doesn't work. Okay, watching this one again, this is definitely not one of Jones's best. But I do commend him for at least trying some things in the black and white setting, and it's quite clear that's what he wanted to do. In fact, this short was rather short by the standards of this time, because a lot of the time the shorts would run between 7 and 8 minutes, and this one is actually 6 minutes and 45. So yeah, I think this was more of an experimental short, just to practice making the black and white short and just practice other elements like the pantomime and light sources and that kind of stuff. This one gets 5 out of 10. Honestly, the 5 is more to do with the actual look of the short and a lot of the shots within and some of the animation and effects and the musical score. But as far as the entertainment goes, it's very average. But you can judge for yourself, and I'm sure you'll agree that even if you watch this and agree with me, or even if you don't, whatever, I'm sure we'll all be in a mutual agreement that this restoration is stunning and hopefully will make its way on disc at some point. So enjoy the short, and until next time, take care.
right!